Okay, so we're back in the Gemara. This is Avodah Zarah. So for the Daf Yomi, this is Daf 36. So it's at the end of 35, we said the Mishnah teaches, and their oil was originally prohibited but later permitted by Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi in his court. The Gemara cites a dispute with regard to the origin of prohibition of oil. Rav says Daniel decreed that oil is prohibited, and Shmuel says the secretion of, we're in 36 now, the secretion of ritually impure vessels prohibits the oil that Gentiles pour into them. The Gemara asks, is that to say that all people are consumers of only ritually pure substances? Since it is common practice to eat ritually impure foods, why should the secretion of impure vessels render the oil prohibited? The Gemara amends Shmuel's statement. Rather, the secretion of prohibited vessels prohibits the oil as it absorbs the prohibited substances. So Shmuel said to Rav, granted, according to my opinion, as I say that the secretion of prohibited vessels prohibits the oil, this is how one can understand that when Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta came, he said that Rabbi Shammai taught in Nitzivin with regard to oil. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and his court were counted, that's like voted, on this matter and permitted it. So Shmuel elaborated. It can be explained that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi holds a prohibited substance that imparts flavor to the detriment of the mixture is permitted. According to Shmuel's explanation, the prohibition was revoked because the taste absorbed the oil. The taste absorbed by the oil would have impaired its flavor rather than enhance it. But according to you, Rav, who said that Daniel decreed a prohibition upon the oil of Gentiles, how can this be understood? Can it be said that Daniel decreed it, and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi came and voided the decree? But didn't we learn in the Mishnah, Adut 1:5, a court cannot void the statements of another court unless it is greater than it in wisdom and in number? According to Rav, how can Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi void a decree issued by Daniel? Rather than answering Shmuel's question directly, Rav first rejects his proof. Rav said to him, was it Rabbi Shammai of Lod of whom you spoke? Residents of Lod are different, as they disparage the sages' decrees, and therefore Rabbi Shammai's testimony is unreliable. Shmuel said to him, shall I send for him? As a result, Rav became embarrassed. Rav claimed that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and his court erred in permitting the oil of Gentiles, which Daniel had prohibited. Okay. Rav said if they, that is Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and his court, did not expound the following verse, will we not expound it? We must certainly do so. Isn't it written, quote, but Daniel proposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the king's food, nor with the wine which he drank. Daniel 1:8. The word mishtav, or he drank, is in the plural, indicating that the verse speaks of two types of drinking. One is the drinking of wine, and one is the drinking of oil. So accordingly, Daniel himself refrained from consuming oil of Gentiles as he instituted this prohibition. Why does Shmuel reject this inference, which indicates that Daniel issued this decree? The Gemara explains that Rav maintained Daniel placed the prohibition against consuming the oil of Gentiles upon his heart, that is, for himself, and he instructed all Jews to adhere to it as well. And Shmuel held Daniel placed the prohibition upon his heart, but he did not instruct all Jews to accept it. The Gemara asks, and is it correct that Daniel decreed that oil is prohibited, but doesn't Bavli say that Avimi of Nota or Nota'a says in the name of Rav, prohibitions of Gentiles' bread and their oil, their wine and their daughters are all from the 18 matters decreed in a single day in the days of the students of Shammai and Hillel. So apparently Rav himself maintains that the prohibition was not instituted by Daniel. So it sounds like what they're trying to say is that it was one of the 18 decrees of Shammai. Okay. The Gemara adds, and if you would say that Daniel came and decreed, but the people did not accept it, the latter students of Hillel and Shammai came and decreed with regard to Gentiles' oil, and the people accepted it. And if that is so, what is the significance of Rav's testimony that Daniel initially instituted the prohibition? The Gemara explains, rather, Daniel decreed upon the oil of Gentiles in the city. And the students of Shammai and Hillel came and decreed that it is prohibited even in the field. So the Gemara asks, and how could Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi permit an ordinance issued by the students of Shammai and Hillel? But didn't we learn in the Mishnah that a court cannot void the statement of another court unless it is greater than it in wisdom and in number? And therefore, doesn't Rabba Bar Chana say that Rabbi Yochanan says, with regard to all issues, a court can void the statements of another court, except the 18 matters decreed by the students of Beit Shammai, as even if Elijah and his court were to come and to rescind them, one would not listen to him. So Rav Mashar Shia, I want to make some comments there, but I guess it's not the place for it anyway, because there's a lot of debate as to, there's little information. There's a lot of debate as to what was happening with those 18 decrees, what those 18 decrees are, and things like that. But I'll skip over that for now. Rav Mashar Shia said, what is the reason that none of the 18 decrees can be voided? Since the prohibition spread among the majority of the Jewish people, it cannot be voided. But with regard to oil, its prohibition did not spread among the majority of the Jewish people, and therefore it can be voided. As Rabbi Shmuel bar Abba says, that Rabbi Yochanan says, our sages sat and inspected the matter of Gentiles' oil and determined that its prohibition had not spread among the majority of the Jewish people, and our sages relied upon the statement of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel and upon the statement of Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok, who would say the sages issue a decree upon the community only if most of the community is able to abide by it. As Rav Ada bar Ahava said, what is the verse from which it is derived? It is the verse. It is the verse, you are cursed with the curse, yet you rob me, even this whole nation. Malachi 3:9. This teaches that if there is the acceptance of the whole nation, yes, an ordinance may be instituted, but if not, no, the ordinance may not be instituted. The Gemara discusses the matter itself. So Bavli says that Avimi of Nota says in the name of Rav, the prohibitions with regard to Gentiles' bread and their oil, their wine and their daughters, are all from the 18 matters issued in a single day in the time of the students of Shammai and Hillel. The Gemara asks, with regard to their daughters, what is the decree? Rabbi Nachman bar Yitzchak says they decreed upon their daughters that they should be classified as menstruating women from the time they are in their cradle. That is, they decreed that from when they are young, Gentile women are always considered to be menstruating. It doesn't mean that. I'm sorry. It means that they're just supposed to be considered as the impurity of such, because you can have impurity from different things, and therefore it's easier to just make the assumption that they're all impure because they're not following purity laws, and therefore it's just, yeah. Some people, I don't like the way that the editor filled in for that, but whatever. The Gemara presents another opinion, and Geneva says in the name of Rav, Gentiles' bread, oil, and wine, and daughters were all decreed upon due to the concern that Jews might participate in idol worship with Gentiles as a result of intermingling with them. So, as when Rav Acha bar Ada came from Eretz Yisrael to Babylonia, he said that Rabbi Yitzchak says, they decreed the prohibition upon their bread due to their oil. The Gemara asks, in what way is the prohibition with regard to oil stronger than the prohibition with regard to bread? That is, why does the primary concern relate to oil of Gentiles rather than the bread? The Gemara offers a different interpretation. Rather, they issued a decree prohibiting their bread and their oil due to their wine. And they issued a decree prohibiting their wine due to the fact that this leads to familiarity and Jews will come to marry their daughters. And they issued a decree prohibiting their daughters due to something else, idolatry. And they further issued a decree upon something else due to something else, which will be explained by the Gemara. So it was stated that the prohibition against marrying the daughters of Gentiles was decreed on account of idolatry. The Gemara raised an objection, but the prohibition against marrying their daughters is prescribed by the Torah law, as it is written, quote, neither shall you make marriages with them, Deuteronomy 7:3. The Gemara explains, by Torah law, intermarriage is prohibited only with the 7 Canaanite nations, but intermarriage with the other nations of the world is not prohibited, and the students of Shammai and Hillel came and decreed that intermarriage is prohibited even with the other nations. Okay. And that might be because in those days, and even in these days, all the nations are mixed up, but I don't know that that's exactly the reason. We could say that that's a potential reason, but it's not the whole story, because, there's the other issue of, you had a foreign oppressor, the Romans, that were ruling your country and oppressing your people, and, intermarrying with them specifically would be not advantageous for the survival of the nation. But anyway, the Gemara asks, and according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who says that the subsequent verse, quote, "For he will turn away your son from following me," Deuteronomy 7:4, serves to include all who turn away one's son from God, that is, all Gentiles, what is there to say? Rather, by Torah law, only sexual relations by way of marriage are prohibited, and they came and decreed that relations are prohibited even by way of licentiousness. So the Gemara raised an objection. Licentiousness was also prohibited earlier, as they decreed a prohibition in this regard in the court of Shem, as it is written, quote, it was told to Judah, saying, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has played the harlot, and moreover, behold, she is with child by harlotry." And Judah said, "Bring her forth and let her be burned." So Genesis 38:24. This proves that the prohibition against licentious intercourse with a Gentile was enforced long before the time of the students of Shammai and Hillel. Okay. Hold on a second. Okay, the Gemara explains, rather, the prohibition prescribed by Torah law applies to the case of a Gentile engaged in intercourse with a Jewish woman, as she is drawn after him toward idolatry, but the case of a Jew who engaged in intercourse with a Gentile woman is not included in the prohibition by Torah law. And the students of Shammai and Hillel came and decreed that the prohibition applies even to the Jew who engaged in intercourse with a Gentile woman. So the Gemara rejects this. The prohibition concerning a Jew who engaged in intercourse with a Gentile woman is a halacha transmitted to Moses Sinai. So not a rabbinic ordinance. As the master said with regard to one who engaged in intercourse with an Armenian woman, zealots may attack him as Phinehas did to Zimri in the wilderness. Last week's Torah portion. Okay. As when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Babylonia, he said, the court of the Hasmoneans decreed that a Jew who engaged in intercourse with a Gentile woman bears liability for transgressing 4 prohibitions, represented by the mnemonic Nun, Shin, Gimel, Aleph. Okay, these letters stand for menstruating woman, so Nida, maidservant, Shivcha, Gentile, Goya, and married woman, Eshet Ish. So by rabbinic law, a man who engages in intercourse with a Gentile woman is considered to have violated the prohibitions involved in having intercourse with all 4 of these women. And when Ravim came from Eretz Yisrael to Babylonia, he said, he bears liability for 4 prohibitions represented by the mnemonic Nun, Shin, Gimel, Zayin, which stands for Nida, Shivcha, Goya, and Zona, so the prostitute, Zona. In any case, it is apparent that this decree was enforced before the time of the students of Shammai and Hillel. The Gemara answers, when the court of the Hasmoneans decreed, they prohibited only intercourse, but with regard to seclusion with a Gentile woman, no, they did not prohibit that. So when the students of Shammai and Hillel came and decreed that even seclusion with a Gentile woman is prohibited, the Gemara raised an objection. Seclusion is also prohibited earlier, as the court of King David decreed that with regard to this matter, So as Rav Yehuda says, at that time, after the incident involving Amnon and Tamar, 2 Samuel 13, 1-19, they decreed with regard to seclusion. The sages said in response to the objection, there in David's court, the seclusion with a Jewish woman was prohibited, but seclusion with a Gentile woman was not prohibited. And the students of Shammai and Hillel came and decreed a prohibition, even with regard to the seclusion with a Gentile woman. Okay. The Gemara raises yet another difficulty. Seclusion with a Jewish woman is prohibited by Torah law. As Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzadak, where there is an allusion in the Torah to the prohibition against seclusion, as it is stated, quote, if your brother, the son of your mother, entices you, Deuteronomy 13, verse 7, and does only a half-brother who is the son of a mother entice one to sin, whereas the son of a father does not entice? Rather, there is a greater concern that a material half-brother might entice one to sin as a son seduces himself with his mother, and no other may seclude himself with any of those with whom relations are forbidden by the Torah. Since an individual and his maternal half-brother both seclude themselves with their shared mother, they are frequently together in private, and this facilitates enticement. In any case, it is clear that the prohibition against seclusion with a Gentile woman preceded King David. So the Gemara explains, the prohibition against seclusion prescribed by Torah law applies specifically to a married woman, and David came and decreed a prohibition even with regard to seclusion with an unmarried woman. And later, the students of the Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel came and decreed even with regard to seclusion with a Gentile woman. Okay. It was stated above that they issued a decree prohibiting the daughters of Gentiles due to something else, idolatry, and they further issued a decree on something else due to the something else. The Gemara asked, what is the meaning of, and they further issued a decree on something else due to something else? So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, they decreed upon a male Gentile. I lost my page. I'm sorry. They decreed upon a male Gentile child that he imparts ritual impurity as though he were a Jew who experienced a gonorrhea-like discharge or ziva, and so that a Jewish child will not become familiar with him, leading to homosexuality. So the sages employed a euphemism when referring to this decree. As Rabbi Zarah says, I had great trouble with regard to Rabbi Asi when I asked him the following question, and likewise Rabbi Asi experienced trouble with Rabbi Yochanan when he posited it to him. And Rabbi Yochanan had trouble with Rabbi Yanai, and Rabbi Yanai had trouble with Rabbi Natan ben Amram, and Natan ben Amram had trouble with Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. The inquiry was as follows. With regard to a male child, a male Gentile child, from when, that is, from what age does he impart ritual impurity as one who experiences ziva? And Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said to me, from when he is 1 day old. And when I came to Rabbi Chia, he said to me, from when is he 9 years old and 1 day old? Okay, when I came back and relayed to Rabbi Chia's statement before Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, he said to me, discard my statement and grasp the statement of Rabbi Chia, who says, from when does a Gentile child impart ritual impurity as one who experiences ziva? And from when is he 9 years old in 1 day? And that is the end of Daf 36. Thanks for watching.